Hello, my name is Daniel Taylor, and our group project topic is the power of conformity. And we'll be looking at Solomon Asch's 1955 article, Opinions and Social Pressure, published in the Scientific American. According to Solomon Asch, the study of human conformity has its origins in the late 19th century, where men like Jean-Martin Charcot, who was also a teacher of Sigmund Freud, developed techniques that alter a person's mental state, leaving them suggestible. This process is called hypnotism. Charcot originally thought that susceptibility to hypnotism was dependent upon one suffering from hysteria. This was proven wrong by Hippolyte Bernheim and A. Lebeu, who demonstrated that they could hypnotize most people. Bernheim hypothesized that suggestibility was a natural human process. Suggestibility was used to explain human behavior in the context of groups, like how people behave in mobs or follow strong leaders. Social psychology as a discipline began during the beginning of the 20th century. The first experiments of studying suggestibility in a social context were called suggestion demonstrations. Subjects were asked their opinions concerning various subjects. Later, those same subjects would be given the opinions of other people or experts and then re-examined. Many people changed their opinion in light of the other known opinions. For example, Edward L. Thorndike believed that he had changed people's preferences using suggestion techniques. So Charcot's hypnotism led to Bernheim and Lebeu's hypnotic refinements in a theory of human suggestibility. To study suggestibility, social psychologists like Edward L. Thorndike performed suggestion demonstrations and concluded that people's opinions could be manipulated, which would eventually lead to Solomon Asch's line comparison experiments.
I'm going to be talking about the methods. So there was 5 experiments I'm going to be talking about. So for the first one, they took 7 to 9 young men that were all college students, and they placed them in a classroom for a psychological experiment. And they were told they'd be comparing the lengths of lines. So the experimenter showed 2 large white cards, and on the one card, it was just a single vertical black line. And that one would be treated as the standard line to be matched. So on the other card, there were 3 vertical lines that were all different lengths. One of the 3 lines is of the same length as the standard card, and the other 2 were substantially different. So the difference ranged from 3/4 of an inch to 1 3/4 inches. All other members of the group except for one were instructed beforehand to give incorrect answers at certain points, and that single individual was the focus point of the experiment. The instructed majority occasionally reported correctly in order to reduce the possibility that the test subject would pick up on the fact that they were giving incorrect answers. The second experiment concluded that the test subject answered wrong more often when 2 people opposed him, and even more when 3 people opposed him, but after 3, it didn't change the outcome. The third experiment concluded that when the test subject is given a truthful partner, they were more likely to answer correctly and independently from the majority. The fourth experiment concluded that when a moderate dissenter is present, the effect of the majority on the subject decreases, and it also proved that most of the errors the subject did make were moderate rather than flagrant. This proved that the dissenter largely controls the choice of errors. The fifth experiment concluded that when the test subject lost a partner, he was wrong more often, but less than when the partner switched to the majority. It also showed that as long as the test subject had a partner, he was more likely to answer correctly, but as the test subject lost partners, he was less likely to answer correctly even when the differences were obvious. In conclusion, the first experiment showed that those who start on the path of independence don't usually give in to the majority, even over an extended series of trials, while on the opposition, those who start on the path of compliance are unable to free themselves as time goes on.
Asch found that under group pressure, 36.8% of the individuals conformed to the wrong answer. So when the group said that one line matched the given line, then 36.8 of the individuals conformed to that wrong answer. 25% of the whole study never conformed, and 75% of the individuals conformed at least once. When 3 or more contradictions happened, then 31.8% of individuals conformed to that wrong answer. And when the individual had an agreeing partner, then the compliance was reduced to a fourth. When the agreeing partner switched to the wrong answer, the individual is more likely to give an error. And whenever the agreeing partner completely left the experiment, then the errors increased much more. When the dissenter gave moderate conformity, reduction of the errors is a third. And when the dissenter gave extreme conformity, the errors dropped to 9%. There were 6 trials with support. 18 out of the 27 remained independent, so they did not change their answer to go along with the wrong answers. And 6 trials were without support, and the conformity increased, so they began going along with the wrong answer and having many errors.
I am going to be talking about the discussion section and how Solomon Asch's experiment on conformity changed the psychological community. This study had 2 primary effects. First, this study scientifically proved for the first time that conformity through social pressure is both real and can be tested. While before it was theorized, no one had been able to perform adequate testing to soundly prove this theory. Secondly, this study also led to the creation of many other studies that explored other aspects of this topic. One of the most famous of these studies was the Stanley Milgram experiment, which worked specifically to find out how long people would inflict pain on someone else when they were told to by an authority figure. I will be going over the subsequent research. Now, this experiment answered many questions that had been unable to be answered before, but it also left many more questions to be answered afterwards. And these are just a few of some of the main questions that they still needed answers to. How consistent will a person be if the situation they are in is different? If a person consistently remains independent, or if they conform to the ideas of others and others' opinions, what does that say about their character or personality? How is independence related to social conditions? And lastly, are leaders more independent, or will they follow just like everyone else when put in a similar situation?
The first criticism is, were the experimenters only writing down the experimental victories? So were they only writing down the ones that conformed to the wrong answer, or were they including the ones that gave their correct answer even when the group said otherwise? Another criticism was, were the investigators being suggestible by the way they were asking the questions, and was it coming off to the participants on whether to select each answer? Is it possible to change someone's judgment without changing their assumptions or their knowledge? So is it possible for the other participants who gave the wrong answer to change the individual's assumption or knowledge due to their wrong answers? And also the location that the experiment happened, is it more likely for the individuals to conform due to them being in a lab or due to the subject that is at hand? So with the lines, it's not very important. So would it have changed the answers if a more important subject was at hand?
This is not an exhaustive list, but scientists are still curious about human conformity. For instance, in a 2017 study called Nature versus Nurture in Human Sociality, multi-level genomic analysis of social conformity, published in the Journal of Human Genetics, studied 2,130 young adults. They found specific genes that suggest moderate genetic influence on conformity. Also, in a 2018 study called Social Conformity in Autism, published in the Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders, researchers studied 22 autistic participants. They basically used a suggestion demonstration model. The subjects were given a memory test using words and then exposed to the answers of 4 other people. They found that their autistic participants were just as likely to be socially influenced as people that do not have autism. In a 2016 study called Political Chameleons, an exploration of conformity in political discussions, researchers conducted 2 studies. In study 1, participants were asked to predict the responses of a fictitious character. They were talking politics at work. Study 2, the subjects discussed politics with disagreeing Confederates. In study 1, the subjects expected the fictional character to conform, and in study 2, the participants did conform to the Confederates' opposing political viewpoints. Like I said, this is not a comprehensive list, but it's meant to exemplify the wide range of topics that apply to human conformity.